Okay, for the next recording, hopefully you watch the Pavlovian conditioning and the little extra ditty there, which wasn't really that important. You need to know the basics of classical conditioning. What you need to know are not just what happened in the experiment, but key terms that people use in classical conditioning. So, on the key trial, and page 241 of your book basically shows it, that if you ring a bell on trial 1, the organism does nothing. If you then show food, the organism will salivate. So on trial 1, we'd call the bell ringing the neutral stimulus, because it doesn't do anything to the organism. We'd call the food the unconditioned stimulus, because food normally causes a salivary response or salivation response. So the food would be considered the unconditioned stimulus because it causes the unconditioned response of, what did we have? Of the salivation. If you do this for a number of trials, what starts happening is the bell, when it's rung, the bell will start causing the organism to salivate. And the question is why? Well, that period, those 10 trials where the organism is learning this, that is called the acquisition period. And what is being acquired is that there is being acquired an association between the food, the unconditioned stimulus, and the bell. And so in this situation, the bell becomes the conditioned stimulus, and it leads to the salivation response, which is the conditioned response. This is a period called acquisition, and you need to know the terms and the ideas behind this. Extinction would be if you actually stopped showing the food for a long time after that, an organism would unlearn things. Generalization, actually a few examples of this for you that might be amusing or not. When I was at the Ohio State University in the early 80s, my second semester, we had 4 small rooms and 4 18-year-olds to each room. And in the winter semester of 1983, we all had, and if you want to write a little bit of this down, we all had classes at 8 a.m., about 12 of us. There were 2 shower stalls and 3 toilets. And it was very interesting what happened on the first day of the semester. We all discovered we'd be in the showers, taking our brief showers, and as soon as somebody flushed the toilet, you would hear a scream come out of the showers. Because when the toilet flushed, all of a sudden, all the cold water would be taken out of the shower stall, and you'd get scalding hot water, and then you'd learn to jump away. You'd scream and you'd jump away. So what do you think happened on day 2 of that situation? Hopefully you figured out that whenever you were in the showers and you heard the toilet flush, you would immediately jump away. That's classical conditioning. One trial learning. We learned that the flushing of the toilet was associated with the losing of the cold water, and so we quickly learned. So we acquired that in one trial learning, and still when people flush toilets, even to this day, extinction is hard for me, that I still kind of listen and try to move away from the shower stall when that happens. Generalization. Story for generalization, if you want to write it down. I used to grow up, and I grew up Jewish. My mother used to love serving beets. All the kids hated beets. We all got sick of them and didn't want anything to do with them. Don't know how you feel about beets, but that's how we felt about beets. Later on in life, during Thanksgiving, for the last probably 35, 40 years, I have never eaten one of the foods on the table for Thanksgiving. Can you figure out what that food is? It was the cranberry sauce. And the question is why? Well, cranberry sauce looks a lot like beets. That's called generalization. So generalization can happen in these situations. Classical conditioning. You pair up stimuli. Organisms learn this. Phobias are many times based on classical conditioning. Let's say you have a test-taking phobia or test-taking anxiety. You might learn this from the first time you go in and take a test and do poorly. Then you learn that, okay, the day you wake up, you're going to feel nauseous and be upset about things. And then you learn that when you get the syllabus at the start of the semester and it says 5 tests, the same thing happens. That is actually given a slightly different term. That is called higher order conditioning. And in higher order conditioning, you're basically learning new things that are basically conditioning you to feel anxious. And a lot of phobias are based on that. What they try to do when they treat those is they try to stop that from happening. Conditioned taste aversions. Very interesting. Do you guys remember eating a food when you were a child and getting sick on it and never touching that food again? Conditioned taste aversions are situations where many times it's one trial learning. The time between the stimulus, eating the food, and getting sick can be many hours, which is kind of unique that you still remember it. And so the time between stimulus and response can be very large. You'll still remember it, and you'll remember it for a lifetime. So conditioned taste aversions can happen as well. The other situation that this sometimes get into, which is a little bit related to cancer research, they always tell people who are getting chemotherapy, never eat your favorite flavor of ice cream before chemotherapy. So the ice cream story about chemotherapy is based on the idea that if you eat your favorite ice cream before chemotherapy, you'll learn to hate that flavor of ice cream because you will associate it with that particular situation. So ice cream and chemotherapy. And finally, the last two abstracts. One of you was given it, you guys were given it as an abstract. Let me just get to the point. It's kind of hard to understand this a little bit. They basically gave mice saccharin, which is like Splenda. On trial 1, they give them that. Then they gave them a drug to suppress their immune system, which worked. It suppressed their immune system. They did this a number of times. Gave them the saccharin, and then they gave them the immunosuppressant drug, and they caused an immunosuppressant response. On trial 1, the saccharin, the sugar, would be the neutral stimulus. The immunosuppressant drug would be the unconditioned stimulus. The immunosuppressant response would be the unconditioned response. But after 10 to 15 trials, what Adder and Cohen found is that as soon as the mice drank the saccharin solution, their immune systems went down for these particular mice. And this is considered a classic study in the field that is now known as psychoneuroimmunology. You can condition your immune system to go down. And abstract B kind of does the same thing. They took medical students right before final exams, and when they were all stressed out, they found that all these immune system players were basically compromised. So you can read about that. And finally, the third abstract, very interesting. If you've ever had your wisdom teeth removed, they gave people with their wisdom teeth removed medication while they were being taken out. Then they came in a little time later and they said, would you like some more pain medication? And of course the people said, yes, give me more pain medication. Unfortunately, to about half the people, they gave them saline. And when they came back later to the group that they gave saline, a lot of them said, oh, my pain is a lot better. This is, of course, called the placebo effect. A little time later, they came back in and they said, would you like some more medication? To the group that got the saline and had the placebo effect. Don't call it placebo condition, call it placebo effect. And in this third situation, they gave these people not saline again, but they gave them Narcan. Narcan is also called naloxone. Naloxone blocks the endorphins. And all of a sudden, when these people were feeling their placebo effect, it was gone. This suggested to the researchers that in phase 2 of the study, when they were feeling the placebo effect, it was almost like their minds were thinking they were getting the drug and they were getting their brain's own endorphins to kick in, because Narcan or naloxone blocks the endorphins. And this is a big deal in scientific research to understand this. So the idea that mind can control body is certainly a big part of this equation as well. So let's see, should we stop it at this point? Yeah, let me stop it at this point before I get to actually maybe one more thing to cover here. With classical conditioning, how to counter condition things. How do you stop people from having these phobias? One of the best approaches to use is called systematic desensitization, where you try to basically build up a hierarchy where people just maybe look at a picture of something they're scared at first, maybe go to a zoo, maybe look in the cage, maybe see, maybe hold the animal, and you try to train them on how to have relaxation and not anxiety while they're doing this. So you develop a hierarchy that is based on classical conditioning procedures that people go through. So if you want to read the article, doing deep breathing and relaxation and visual imagery is all a big part of this. So that'll cover this part of the presentation, and then we'll get to the last part. Thanks. Bye-bye.